Senate Committee on Business and Commerce come to order. The clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Present.
Senator King,
Here.
Senator Birdwell,
Present.
Senator Campbell, Senator Creighton,
I'm here.
Senator Johnson,
Here.
Senator Colhurst, Senator Colhurst, okay, Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton, Senator Nichols,
Here.
Senator Zaffarini. 9 present.
There being 9 present and quorum is established. Good morning, members. Members, Senate media is working on it, but the mics might be on even though they say they're off. So just so you know, I'm not 100% sure. Just pretend like they are, as always, right? My plan today is first attend to pending business voting. We'll then take testimony on a number of bills that have been referred. Is anyone wishing to make any opening comments? Hearing none. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business in the bill. Whoops, can't do that one. 553 by Senator West. The committee sub was adopted at the previous meeting. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 553 do not pass, but the substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. The clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Aye.
Senator King,
Aye.
Senator Birdwell,
Aye.
Senator Campbell, Senator Creighton,
Aye.
Senator Johnson,
Aye.
Senator Colhurst,
Aye.
Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton,
Aye.
Senator Nichols,
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini. 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes and 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 553 is favorably reported. Without objection, is going to be referred to local and uncontested. Let the record reflect that Senator Zaffarini is here. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business, Senate Bill 1464 by Senator West. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1464 be reported favorably to the full Senate with recommendation that do pass and be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Aye.
Senator King,
Aye.
Senator Birdwell,
Aye.
Senator Campbell,
One 464.
Senator Creighton,
Aye.
Senator Johnson,
Aye.
Senator Colhurst, Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton, Senator Nichols,
Yes.
Senator Zaffarini. 9 ayes, 1 nay.
There be 9 ayes and 1 nay. Senate Bill 1464 is favorably reported to the full floor. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business, Senate Bill 761 by Senator Hughes. 761, members. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 761 be reported favorably to the full Senate with recommendation that do pass and be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Aye.
Senator King,
Aye.
Senator Birdwell,
Aye.
Senator Campbell, Senator Creighton,
Aye.
Senator Johnson,
Aye.
Senator Colhurst, Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton, Senator Nichols, Senator Zaffarini. 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes and 0 nays. Senate Bill 761 is favorably reported and without objection sent to local and uncontested. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business, Senate Bill 1076 by Senator King. 1076, members. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1076 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Aye.
Senator King,
Aye.
Senator Birdwell,
Aye.
Senator Campbell, Senator Creighton,
Aye.
Senator Johnson,
Aye.
Senator Colhurst, Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton, Senator Nichols, Senator Zaffarini.
There have been 10 ayes and 0 nays. Senate Bill 1076 is favorably reported. Senator King moves that 1076 be recommended for local and contested without objection. It is so ordered. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business 1083 by Senator King. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1083 be reported favorably to the full Senate with recommendation that do pass and be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Aye.
Senator King,
Aye.
Senator Birdwell,
Aye.
Senator Campbell, Senator Creighton, Senator Johnson, Senator Colhurst, okay, Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton, Senator Nichols, Senator Zaffarini. 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes and 0 nays. Senate Bill 1083 is favorably reported without objection sent to local and uncontested. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business. The committee sub to Senate Bill 1204 by Senator Paxton. 1204, members. Committee substitute was adopted at the previous meeting. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1204 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner,
Aye.
Senator King,
Aye.
Senator Birdwell,
Aye.
Senator Campbell, Senator Creighton, Senator Johnson, Senator Colhurst, Senator Menendez, Senator Middleton, Senator Nichols, Senator Zaffarini. 10 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1204 is favorably reported without objection, local and contested. Chair lays out a matter of pending business 1222 by Senator Zaffarini. Senator King moves adoption of the committee substitute Senate Bill 1224 without objection, 1222 without objection, so ordered. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1222 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass, be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colkhorst? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1222 is favorably reported without objection, sent to local and contested. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 1568 by Senator Campbell. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1568 be reported favorably to the full Senate with recommendation that do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Bill, Mr. Chairman.
1568.
Thank you.
1568. Go ahead.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colkhorst? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols? Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Senate Bill 1568 is favorably reported without objection, sent to local and contested. 1577, Chair lays out as a matter of pending business committee substitute Senate Bill 1577 by Senator Menendez. Senator King moves adoption of the committee substitute Senate Bill 1577 without objection, so ordered. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1577 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colkhorst?
Aye.
Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1577 favorably reporting without objection, sent to local and contested. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business 1835 by Senator Hinojosa. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1835 be reported favorably to the full Senate. Recommendation that do pass be printed.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colkhorst?
Aye.
Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Senate Bill 1835 is favorably reported to the full Senate and without objection sent to local and contested. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business 1751 by Senator Colkhorst. Senator King moves adoption of the committee substitute Senate Bill 1751 without objection. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1751 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colkhorst? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Committee substitute 1751 is favorably reported without objection sent to local and contested. Chair lays out a matter of pending business 1699 by Senator Johnson. Senator King moves adoption of the committee substitute and without objection so ordered. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1699 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton? Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colkhorst? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton? Senator Nichols? Senator Zaffarini?
There have been 10 ayes, 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1699 is favorably reported without objection sent to local and contested. 1929. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 1929 by Senator Johnson. Senator King moves adoption of the committee substitute 1929 without objection so ordered. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1929 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton? Senator Johnson? Senator Colkhorst? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton? Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini?
There have been 10 ayes and 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1929 is favorably reported without objection sent to local and contested. 510. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business. Committee substitute to Senate Bill 510 by Senator Perry. There is a new committee substitute, I understand. Senator Perry, Senator King moves to withdraw the previous substitute without objection so ordered. Senator King sends up the committee substitute, Senate Bill 510. And Senator Perry, thank you for being here. You're recognized to explain the new committee substitute
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Keeps all the changes from the committee sub number 1, but adds an additional exception for HHSC to allow the agency to disclose the last 4 digits of a social security number in connection with the verification of employability or employee misconduct registry. That removed the fiscal note. They would have to gone in there and deleted all of those fields out in that software. It's not an easy process. So that's basically what it does. Eliminates all the fiscal notes.
Without objection, we'll go ahead and adopt it. Members, any questions of Senator Perry? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote it. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 510 do not pass, but committee substitute adopted thereof do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Sorry, Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colcourse?
Aye.
Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols? Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
10 ayes and 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 510 is favorably reported without objection sent to local and contested. Just about 6 more, gentlemen and ladies. 1425, Chair lays out as a matter of pending business. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1425 by Senator Perry. There is also a new committee substitute. Senator King moves to withdraw the previous substitute without objection, so ordered. Senator King sends up the new committee substitute, Senate Bill 1425, and Senator Perry, you're recognized to explain the new sub.
Industry agreed upon clarification deletes total taxes paid under subsection 3 and replaces it with total operating tax expense. It's made to use the same language as the current small company reporting requirements, so its clear information is subject to public disclosure.
Members' questions, hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1425 do not pass. The committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton? Senator Johnson? Senator Colcourse? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini?
There are 10 ayes and 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1425 is favorably reported and without objection sent to local and contested. 1710, Chair lays out as a matter of pending business. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1710 by Senator Perry. There is a new committee substitute. Senator King was to withdraw the previous committee substitute and sends up the new committee substitute without objection. So adopted. Senator Perry, you're recognized to explain the new committee substitute.
Thank you,
1710.
members. 1710's committee substitute removes the VoIP assessment from the bill. Therefore, the bill will no longer add the assessment to new customers. Additionally, adds both subsection P under section 2 and section 6 are removed in the new sub. These were changes that were mistakenly altered by alleged counsel in the previous sub. These provisions will be removed at the request of industry stakeholders. There is also language that requires the PUC to act within 180 days if the provider voluntarily relinquishes support. The sub now requires the PUC to act within 90 days. Again, an industry request, and we're good with it.
So this is the USF bill, members. Any questions regarding the new sub and where we are as far as all the various stakeholders is that they are,
Everybody's good across the board. It actually does remove those exchanges that shouldn't be in the USF going forward. It gives a glide path out. It's long overdue. It's a good spot. It's a good spot to be in. Thank you, guys.
so
for the
this
work.
was out prior to the members, prior to just now, right?
Yes.
If I remember correctly. All right, very good. Any questions? Hearing none, we adopted Senate Bill 1710, the new committee substitute. And with that, Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1710 do not pass, but the substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Colcourse? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton?
Aye.
Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini?
Been 10 ayes and 0 nays. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1710 is favorably reported. And Senator Perry, take that to the floor. I'll send it local and contested without objection. 1 second. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business, Senate Bill 853 by Senator Hancock. 853, members. There is a committee substitute. Senator King sends up the committee substitute, Senate Bill 853. Senator Hancock, you are recognized to explain the differences between the substitute and the bill as filed. This is regarding the electricity services provided by certain municipalities. Senator King, I'm sorry, Senator Hancock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members, the committee substitute addresses a few concerns with the initial bill. It removes the language that states that petitioning customer or a group must have non-demand metered total usage of more than 100,000 kilowatt hours per year. or is served through a demand meter, secondary or primary voltage. We've mirrored the process to customers outside the city limits, so we're trying to keep some consistency here. If you remember, those were brought in and really treated differently, so we're trying to mirror that to keep it the same. We've also added language that requires these customers' signatures may only be counted on the first filed petition. This would act as a guardrail to how many times customers may petition and trigger a full rate review. We've also added language to provide an opportunity for municipally owned utility to respond to a review and make publicly available the Commission's website. Lastly, the rate review will have a limited duration period and will expire on September 1, 2028.
Members' questions regarding the significant changes of the bill? Okay. So without objection, we're going to adopt the committee substitute Senate Bill 853. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 853 do not pass, but the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. The clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator
I know it.
Senator Creighton?
No idea what that was.
I don't have a TikTok bill.
That's my bill.
I do not have TikTok.
TikTok is my.
Senator Creighton? Senator Johnson? Senator Colchers? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton? Senator Nichols? Senator Zaffarini? 8 ayes and 2 nays.
There being 8 ayes and 2 nays, the committee substitute Senate Bill 853 is favorably reported to the full Senate. Thank you, Senator. Senate Bill 1117 by Senator Hancock. First, I understand that there is a new committee substitute. Senator King moves to withdraw the previous committee substitute, and we send up the new committee substitute and adopt it. Senator Hancock, you're recognized on the new committee substitute to
Yeah.
Senate Bill 1117.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the committee substitute really is pretty easy. We just simply removed language that caused some confusion on the previous bill that you saw, whether an entity would be exempt from paying the fee altogether. They provide cable or any other service, have physical infrastructure or public rights of way, and provide streaming services. The intent of the bill is to simply clarify that no fee is due for a service that does not have a physical infrastructure in the ground. In fact, I think Senator King and I were discussing this last time. The last time this was updated, members, Senator King did it, and Netflix arrived with a CD in your mailbox. And so the need for updating this and making sure it's not treated any differently just because we're using new technology, that it's treated the same as back when we sent CDs to you by mail. Now it's just showing up through your existing infrastructure that is paying a fee. That's what the bill does.
Members' questions? Without objection, that the committee substitute was adopted. Senator King moves that Senate Bill 1117 do not pass, but substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. Clerk call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton?
Aye.
Senator Johnson? Senator Colchorst? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton? Senator Nichols? Senator Zaffarini? 8 ayes and 2 nays.
There being 8 ayes and 2 nays, committee substitute Senate Bill 1117 is favorably reported to the full Senate. 2 more bills. Members, Senator King, you had recognized me on Senate Bill 1093.
Certainly. Chair lays out, as a matter of pending business, Senate Bill 1093 by Senator Swartner. I understand there is a committee substitute. Senator Nichols sends up the committee substitute for Senate Bill 1093, and Senator Swartner is recognized to explain the differences between the substitute and the bill as filed.
Thank you, members. This is the electricity supply chain map, and the substitute is agreed upon language that specifies that each electric utility, TDU, co-op, and MOU must provide the utility's service area boundary map using good faith efforts in a geographic information system format to the PUC. It also clarifies that natural gas facility operators have access to their specific portion of the electricity supply chain map. And that's it, members.
Members, any questions, comments? Senator Nichols moves adoption of the committee substitute to SB 1093. Is there objection? Chair hearing none, the motion is adopted. Senator Nichols moves that SB 1093 do not pass, but that the substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. The clerk will please call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell?
Yeah.
Senator Creighton? Senator Johnson? Senator Colcourse? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton? Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini? 10 ayes.
Being 10 ayes and 0 nays, the committee substitute SB 1093 is favorably reported. Senator Nichols moves that the committee substitute to Senate Bill 1093 be recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Chair lays out Senate Bill 2399. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business the committee substitute to Senate Bill 2399 by Senator Schwartner. Senator Nichols moves adoption of the committee substitute to Senate Bill 2399. Is there objection? Chair hearing none, the motion is adopted. Senator Nichols moves that SB 2399 do not pass, but that the substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Shortner?
Aye.
Senator King?
Aye.
Senator Birdwell?
Aye.
Senator Campbell? Senator Creighton? Senator Johnson? Senator Colcourse? Senator Menendez? Senator Middleton? Senator Nichols?
Aye.
Senator Zaffarini?
There being 10 ayes and 0 nays, the committee substitute to Senate Bill 2399 is favorably reported. Senator Nichols moves that the committee substitute to SB 2399 be recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered.
Thank you, members. That was a lot of voting, so appreciate your indulgence. We're going to go on to new business now. Chair lays out Senate Bill 1732 by Senator Hancock. Senator Hancock, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Y'all, now that you've filled up the local and uncontested calendar, I would like to lay out Senate Bill 1732. The Texas sheer volume of roadway leaves opportunity for charging station deployment across the state. As the committee knows from the recent hearing and vote on Senate Bill 1001, a Texas Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Deployment Plan was approved. As we implement the plan for Senate Bill 1732, provides electric vehicle charging station standards for new public charging stations and legacy stations already in use. The bill ensures that Texas drivers can use a network of stations across the state, no matter what car you're driving. There is substitute.
There is a committee substitute. Senator King sends up the committee substitute without objections. Adopted, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, the committee substitute simply adds language in Section 2 that allows for delayed compliance of the equipment installed prior to the effective date of this bill in accordance with federal timelines. Also, we're trying to get confirmation on that because of supply chain issues to make sure that we don't need to tweak that date as well.
Members, questions regarding Senate Bill, the substitute Senate Bill 1732? Hearing none, we're going to open up public testimony. There are 3 people wishing to testify. The chair calls Smitty Smith, Jessica Escobar, and Francesca Wall. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Tom Smith, or Smitty, Director of the Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance. We do electric vehicle policy in the state. We're a group of put together of utilities, charging companies, manufacturers, and various kinds of consumers and advocacy groups. We support this bill and would like to thank Senator Hancock for his leadership in this. Senator Schwartner, we also want to thank you for your leadership in the general electric vehicle space. I think, as you all know, EVs are accelerating rapidly up the growth curve. I checked last night. There has been a 60% increase in the number of electric vehicles registered in Texas in just a year. We expect that somewhere between 2026 and 2033, we'll hit 50% of all new vehicle sales in Texas will be electrified. And that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2.5 million vehicles at that point. We need to get the charging infrastructure in place, and this is a foundational bill to do that. 80% of the charging stations are going to be privately funded. And so coming up with standards that apply across all of these charging stations is similar to the kinds of things we've done with gas pumps in in other legislation or in the work you did with 1001. And this bill will essentially assure that there is access to the most commonly used charging systems, or the ones that are available by the majority of the manufacturers, that will become the new or majority of all the vehicles on the road. So no matter what kind of plug so it'll be basically an equitable system. Whatever charging plug you use, there will be an adapter available to make sure you can get energy. Thank you all very much for your time.
Members, questions? Ms. Escobar is with TDLR. If you don't have any resource questions. Okay. And then Francesca Wall, you recognized?
Thank you. My name is Francesca Wall. I'm on the public policy team at Tesla, and I manage EV charging infrastructure policy for Tesla. Tesla has some concerns with SB 1732 as in its current form. We are actively working with the author to be able to address those concerns, so we're hopeful that that will be taken forward. Before I dive into the concerns, I just briefly wanted to address the kind of state of fast charging infrastructure today. As you all probably know, there are several different levels of charging, so I will just speak to public fast charging. Tesla has deployed an extensive network of public fast charging across the U.S., including in Texas. We have 113 stations with over 1,200 fast charging connectors. And we've done that all with privately funded money that Tesla has invested in this area. So today, there is no universal fast charging connector type that is available. There are two common types. One is CCS, and another one is the Tesla connector, which is also known as the North American Charging Standard. Tesla represents about 78% of the fast charging connectors in Texas, in line with about 72% of the EVs in Texas. And so our investment in infrastructure has been proportionate to the vehicles on the road. I will say that Tesla is also already working on opening its network. We've made both the Tesla charging standard available to all other auto manufacturers to utilize, as well as charging operators. And we are also working on a product that would enable other vehicles to charge. However, given the timelines in the current bill, we are concerned that the impact to retrofitting our existing stations, which is impossible for some of our stations, would be detrimental to infrastructure deployment. Thank you.
Members, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I had a question for Tesla. Sorry, I missed your name here. So y'all's charging stations, are they privately owned or are they?
Yes, they are
Public
privately
private
owned by Tesla.
Okay, so, and I know the bill exempts privately owned at your home or whatnot that are not available to the public. But so just to be clear here, that you're talking about privately owned charging stations here that you would have to retrofit, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the cost of that, you think?
It's hard to say the exact cost, but based on estimates that we've done internally, it would be millions of dollars. It would not be a simple investment.
Okay. Like at Buc-ee's, for example, I think that's all, right? Privately owned.
Correct. Privately owned and
Yeah, that's the
operated by
example
Tesla.
we all know about here, is the Tesla charging stations at Buc-ee's. So I guess my other question is, y'all are not participating in the TxDOT program, right? I mean, there was the $700 million. This doesn't have anything to do with that, right? The existing stations that you have, that's a new program that would be government-owned, right? Charging stations, or government, I guess, funded through the Inflation Reduction Act, or I forget which bill.
Correct. Today, Tesla stations have all been privately funded by Tesla. If Tesla were to participate in a public funding program, we would be providing access, just like everyone else, to other vehicles to utilize our chargers, but that's in the context of being funded to do so.
Okay. And some of the other manufacturers have, though, participated in those public programs.
Correct, but similarly, today, natively, Tesla vehicles cannot charge on another fast charging connector. So given that we are 70% of the vehicles on the road, all of our customers would need an adapter to be able to charge at those other stations.
To me, that seems like a difference, between the two types of charging stations here. So, other manufacturers have chosen to participate and you haven't. So, anyway, I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Of the Tesla charging stations, how many actually have compatibility with other vehicles, other types of chargers?
Today, the Tesla stations only charge Tesla vehicles. Our announcement to open our connector to other vehicles was made last year. It's always been available for others to utilize, and there are others that are actively working on that. So there will likely be announcements later this year on that. But today, only Tesla vehicles can
So all
utilize our
1,300 or
chargers.
so in the state are not able to charge any other vehicle type?
Correct. We started building out our system 10 years ago in 2012, where no other vehicles on the road could take the level of charge that our vehicles could. And so we decided to move forward with our system and invest in that in order to be able to sell vehicles. Our primary business is selling cars, but we know in order to sell cars, we need to provide charging access.
Mr. Smith?
So there's one of the things I want to make sure everybody realizes is that a Tesla owner can buy an adapter. I've seen them as cheap as $150. It allows them to charge at any other what's called a CCS station, which is the new common charging system. This is kind of like a debate between the Apple power plug, the FireWire, and the USB plug that is used on a whole variety of other kind of technologies. And so what we're asking and what is in this bill is essentially to say that in charging stations there will be a adapter that would enable people who are driving other vehicles to charge at the Tesla stations. And this is all about electricity. Once the infrastructure is put in place under a previous bill coming out of this committee or otherwise, there will be electricity that can either come through the Tesla fast charger or the CCS fast charger. And the Tesla company will make revenue off of the sales of that energy through that charging station. So it's just a matter of making sure that just as Tesla owners have the opportunity to charge at CCS stations, people who are going to drive in cars that take the CCS plug will have the opportunity to charge at the Tesla station.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Members, questions of the panel? Thank y'all very much. We're going to leave Senate Bill 1732 pending. Chair lays out SJR 57 by Senator Parker. Senator Springer, you're up next. You were lucky enough not to have any witnesses. So. You're recognized, sir, to lay out SJR 57.
Is this his first bill?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you all today with SJR 57, which proposes a constitutional amendment to allow this legislature to review final rules promulgated by the Texas state administrative agencies. In 2022 alone, Texas administrative agencies enacted more than 3,700 final rules, 94 of which were emergency rules exempt from normal notice and comment procedures. In the last 5 years, Texas agencies enacted more than 25,000 final rules, 567 of them through emergency rulemaking. Despite being quasi-legislative, these administrative actions have the full force of law and are legislative in nature. Article 3 of the Texas Constitution vests all legislative power in the Texas Senate and House of Representatives. While the legislature has permissibly delegated rulemaking authority to Texas administrative agencies, the ultimate responsibility for all legislative enactments rests with the legislature. In order to fulfill its constitutional responsibilities and maintain a proper balance of power between the legislative and executive branches, the Texas legislature must be able to ensure that administrative rulemaking aligns with its legislative intent. Currently, Texas law provides no comprehensively applicable mechanism for legislative review of rules promulgated by administrative agencies. In contrast, 37 other states have some type of law allowing for legislative review. A constitutional amendment allowing the legislature to review final administrative rules would remedy this gap in Texas statute. SJR 57 proposes such an amendment, which would allow for legislative review of any administrative rule to ensure that the rule is consistent with the legislative intent of the statute, that the rule was written to interpret, prescribe, implement, or enforce. Upon completion of review, the legislature would have sole authority to approve or reject the rule, in whole or in part. As for the mechanics of this bill, we are starting a dialogue today about how we as the legislature want to implement this review system. SJR 57 gives the legislature flexibility to design the best program for our needs, and I wanted to get my colleagues' feedback today in this committee. I then intend to take the fruit from our discussion here and come back with an SCR to establish the system of our legislative review and also bring back a committee substitute that will include a gubernatorial veto as part of this review process. My friends, we are so blessed to have our great governor and his many excellent appointees, but the essence of this bill is to address the bureaucratic state that exists out of control, not just in D.C., but also very much here in Austin. We pass hundreds of bills every session, and these agencies are left to interpret. And those interpreting the legislation we pass are many wonderful people, but they are not elected, they are not appointed, and are therefore not directly accountable to Texans. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my opening comment and be happy to answer any questions about the SCR.
How are the rules currently reviewed again, just so we...
Well, today, what's happening, in my assessment, and I want everyone's feedback here on the committee, is that, when these rules are coming down, we're not really being consulted. I don't know about your experiences, but I've been consulted very few times over all the years I've been blessed to be in the legislature, and the level of feedback that I get sometimes is startling, where they'll say something along the lines of that, we understand your legislative intent better than you do, representative or senator or what have you. And so, again, we have so many wonderful people working in our agencies. I think it's important that we understand that. But there's a bureaucratic mess that we have to address, and I think we're trying to keep that in line. And that's what this SCR is all about, is trying to find a mechanism similar. What I'm advocating, Mr. Chairman, is something similar to Sunset, where you'd have members of both chambers on a committee that would review further all of the various rulemaking that's taking place in the interim.
Okay. Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Parker. Let me, this is a great constitutional discussion we're going to have here. The best recent example we've seen federally of why I think this is needed, but I would be cautionary with a gubernatorial veto, is federal government Security Exchange Commission wrote the rule for ESG investing. And remember, in your laid it out pretty directly, that when the legislature, be it federal or state, says here's rulemaking authority, we are delegating authority to the executive to write rules related to the law that we pass. But anyone that delegates authority also has the ability to retract it. And the example with the ESG that the SEC just recently did, where the House and the Senate passed legislation that said, no, you will not, and then President Biden vetoed it. In the normal legislative process, the legislature writes law, the executive can veto, and then the legislature can override that veto in writing law, thus sandwiching the executive with both ends of the legislative spectrum. The difference with rulemaking is that you can have somebody write rules using the authority that we have delegated to them to do so. But instead of us retracting that authority from them and that being the end of the discussion, the ESG example is you had people in the SEC write the rule, the legislature passes legislation that says no, president vetoes it, now the legislative branch is inside the sandwich of the initiating and closing actions of the executive. So And while you could still have a veto override at that point, it's not something that has routinely occurred certainly doesn't happen very often at the federal level. And I don't know the last time it's happened at the state level. Now, structurally, we have, because there's no veto override session, most of the vetoes that occur are usually after the legislature's already sine died.
Right.
So we're functionally not on the battlefield. So I know this is a long discussion, but if we go down this road, which I agree with your sentiment, and I agree with the direction that you're going, do we look at this as the legislature is retracting your authority? No one else, like you said in Article 1, has the authority to legislate. So if we retract that authority, it's not subject to a gubernatorial veto. We've removed that authority from you, and we're going to do this. Whether it's a commander in the military or the legislature having the ability to say, we gave you this authority, but we have the ability to retract it, and we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Or if you do a veto, do you set a lower threshold for the veto as opposed to 2/3 so that the legislature can speak? And oh, by the way, depending upon when this occurs, when the rulemaking structure occurs, what do we do in the interim for 19 months? Have you thought through that? So I'm putting it all out there for you to be able to respond to and get your thinking on this.
Well, Senator, first of all, thank you for that. Very thoughtful comments and reflections. Look, at the end of the day, it is in the domain of the legislature. And I want this SCR to reflect what we want to do as a body. Not my view, but collectively what we think is in the best interest of the state. And so I am very flexible and open to the structures that you just described, and whether or not it's exclusively within the prowess, so to speak, of the legislature, or whether or not we allow for the gubernatorial veto scenario to be put in place. Again, we're putting in place an SCR not just for the current period, but for permanently going forward. And so I think what I really like to do, Senator, is gotten your feedback on some of this here today. I'd like to get everybody's feedback, not necessarily you're in committee, but just in casual conversation as well as we come back with a substitute. But my view is that, to address this issue mechanically, it's a structure like Sunset, that has representatives from both chambers, and that you're able to take up as a special committee, reviews things. And if there's a particular rule that is a concern to you that's been flagged, well, then it can take action. And work on our behalf collectively to address it. So that's how I vision it mechanically, but structurally, the constitutional framework, some flexible based on what we think as a body is best.
I would think there needs to be some element of how we time these so that the interim can't be leveraged against the legislature with the rules adopted, immediately
100%
after
agree.
sine die. We've seen,
Yes.
UT Austin make decisions 2 weeks after sine die.
Yes.
But
We've seen those kind of experiences many times over the years.
yeah.
Yes.
And so you could end up with a state agency, and then that period of the interim, how does the legislature call itself in, or do you have some sort of sunset based upon the recommendation? Does that recommendation of a sunset? So those are all the things that we're going to have to think through about.
Absolutely.
How do we do this structurally so that what we structurally put in place, your legislature structure, not the personality, and so you put something in place that can't be abused in the future.
Yes.
Nor is the 19 months of the interim leveraged against the legislature while we're not on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves impotent.
That's right.
In relationship to the timing of when a rule is being adopted.
That's right. And again, this focus is all about our legislative intent, all of us collectively being implemented with fidelity. That's all we're talking about here in the end.
Yeah.
So absolutely, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Great
Thank you,
comments.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
The rules that are currently being reviewed by the executive branch, how many people are in that? Technically, I don't know, it's an office, right? I guess, a sub-office of, do we know?
I don't know the head count there, Senator. I can take a look at it. And again, I want to stress, obviously we're so blessed to have a wonderful governor, Governor Abbott, and incredible numbers of great appointees that he's placed in critical roles. But this is the bureaucracy that lives on regardless of appointments and who's in office and so on and so forth. And so I just believe we need to put some structure in place to manage it long term, so that we always make certain that we are representing the people that we're elected to represent most accurately and with fidelity. And that's the reason why we're taking this path.
Well, the concern is valid regarding making of laws and then the interpretation of those laws through rulemaking, and then actually the enforcement of those laws. Every step has potential changes that, and as we've all seen on this dais, some pretty significant, not 180s, but
We've all experienced. If you spend any time here at all, you've seen those. You've seen those firsthand. You've had all those war stories, and so that's really what this is all about.
Senator Creighton and then Senator Nichols.
Senator Parker, have you brought a bill before Senate Business and Commerce this session?
I have, yes, Senator.
Yeah. Were you able to let the chairman know how long this layout was going to take?
Probably didn't do the best job of that, Senator.
Although I did appreciate your exchange with Senator Birdwell and sort of founder's intent related to how this bill will work, but is it your intention for this to be bicameral oversight, or is this favoritism towards the Senate?
Definitely bicameral would be in the best interest of the state. That's for sure, Senator.
And then I would assume, with this being one of the best committees in the Senate, that you're planning on putting more work on the members of Business and Commerce and the chair. And do you have an at-home legislative work provision built into the bill for the even-numbered years?
There you go. We'll have to talk about that concept, obviously, Senator. But no, look, this is the feedback I wanted to get. Obviously, I want to be respectful of his time here this morning. We can continue this conversation, obviously, offline and on the floor and around the Capitol complex. But I think it's just important that we have these conversations and talk about structurally how we address these issues.
So for the sunset, just talking sunset in general, how have you seen this type of structure in other states, or what did you model the bill off of?
Well, I mean, again, there are 37 other states that have a structure that allows for the legislature to weigh in on the rulemaking process in different forms and fashions. And so, we've broadly tailored this SCR for this dialogue. But like I said, I want to come back with a substitute that puts in place some direction on the mechanics of how it would operate, coupled with finalizing our view of the right balance of power, so to speak, amongst the branches.
So if an agency has the authority to contract with one vendor without an RFP and executes a contract for $500 million to $750 million without input from appropriators or legislative oversight, is that an example that falls within the scope of the intent of your bill?
Absolutely. That would be something that would be could be reviewed by this committee. And again, it's all about making certain that what the actions that the agencies are taking have fidelity with the statutes that we pass.
Or executing an incredibly expensive lease, long-term lease, in one of the newer office buildings in Austin, whatever the situation may be.
All of those kinds of situations would be applicable, along with obviously just the blocking and tackling of basic rulemaking.
Yeah, I think it's a good bill. I appreciate you bringing it. Thank
No,
you.
thank you, Senator.
Senator Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand your frustration. I think all of us have had experiences where either we passed a bill or somebody else passed a bill, and then the agency wrote it in a way that's differently from what we intended.
Night and day often, right?
But I've also, this isn't the first time I've seen somebody come forward with something similar to this. The last two times I saw it, it wasn't a constitutional amendment. It was some kind of a statute, which somebody may write the rules on that differently too. But I remember the first time I had a member, and it was a House member, that came to me with something like this. And he was very frustrated because they didn't write the rules the way he had intended. And I'm going, well, let's look at the language of the bill. And as you read the language of the bill, it could probably have been interpreted several ways. And so while I'm voting on legislation, we try to look at what the words say, not necessarily what the author intended, because sometimes it's written in a way that has unintended consequences. And there are already several recourses. I've seen agencies write something that was totally different than what I had intended. and basically went over to the agency and had some long discussions with them. They don't like those discussions.
Right.
But you can actually have those discussions with them and reshape and rationalize and things like that. And I've seen rules change based on input from legislators just by having a dialogue with those agencies. I'm also very aware that we've got a group of, I guess you could, let's say lobbyists, who come here lobbying on legislation, and as soon as the session's over, they go over to the agencies and lobby on the rules.
Sure.
So it's a never-ending kind of a thing. But we already do have a recourse. The first recourse is you can talk to that agency. The second recourse is, unlike the federal government, we really have much more control over our agencies because every 18 months, we're back here working on the budget. And there's a lot of things you can do in a budget they don't like to have done in a budget. And so there's a second recourse there. This is a pretty high bar. I've seen members write such sloppy bills that could be interpreted so many different ways. I could just see a never-ending loop, especially with a constitutional amendment. It sounds good. I know your intentions are well, but I think we already have some recourses.
Senator, thank you for the feedback. And look, I'll be the first one to acknowledge, that when you engage with the agencies, oftentimes the experience is better than when you don't. You know that. And certainly, look, we all know the issues that we've had with regard to language being tightly written, so to speak, on all the legislation that we pass. And we, of course, have had lots of issues with regard to bandwidth with Ledge Council, which affects maybe the quality of some of those drafts because just the speed with which they need to get done, and so many requests have increased over the years. And so I think those are all fair comments. I just still fundamentally believe that structurally this is something that needs to be taken seriously, because the problem in my mind, despite the fact that, yes, we're in a better position than D.C., we still have a real issue, in my opinion, that needs to be managed long-term, beyond our term of service. And so I'm just cognizant on whether or not what the best structure is and putting those kind of tools in place for the long haul, not just our time of service. But I appreciate your comment, Senator, and it's invaluable to me. So thank you very much.
Senator Parker, help us understand in your evaluation of this bill and the need for it, are all rules at every agency currently being reviewed by the rule review team, or is it just select rules? And are they all have to be signed off before they're implemented at the agency level, or are they implemented and then reviewed concurrently? Do you have any insight into that?
Well, we obviously could get some expert testimonial on that today, call some resource witnesses, but at some point have those conversations. But, my view is that, yes, I think that the governor's team is doing their very best to look at all those different rules that are happening. I think it's a bandwidth issue, candidly, just the number of bills that we pass and the things that are, not, being maybe fully vetted. And that's my perspective, and the reason why I think having additional eyes on it from a committee of the legislature, so to speak, that's bicamerally structured, makes good sense, right, to be able to address just what you described.
Specifically, are all rules being reviewed prior to implementation?
Well,
are you aware of the...
My perspective is that, again, I'll defer to what the governor's office would share with us in that regard, but my view is that not all rules are being reviewed.
Okay. Senator Johnson and Senator Birdwell again. And then Senator Colkhurst, too. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Parker, first I want to acknowledge and thank you for having the courage to bring up something that can be hard to talk about, and that's the erosion of the separation of powers, checks and balances in our system. And I see it in Washington, I see it in Texas, I see it in this legislature. I see us drafting bills specifically to evade judicial review. I see the executive in the interim moving billions of dollars around with the quick okay of one or two members of the legislature. And while I think the political results of those processes have generally been pleasing to majorities of people, I think the erosion of checks and balances and separation of powers is a serious issue. And you raise it here. I've seen agencies in Washington, CMS among others, that do things that are well beyond statute, and the legislature has to come back at them. So you're raising an important issue, and it's an important discussion. I think we would do well to listen to the wisdom of Senator Nichols thoughtful person who's observed
Extremely thoughtful.
over the years, and I want to echo some of his concerns. First of all, these agencies, these bureaucracies, bureaucracy is not necessarily a pejorative word, have these things called experts, and they know what they're doing. And us 181 legislators, like you and me and everyone on this dais, work a lot during session and during the interim. And I'm concerned that if we get into the habit of reviewing every rule that comes out of every agency and having the authority to approve or reject some portion of what they're doing page by page, we're never going to go home. And lacking the expertise that they have, we may make bad policy. So there needs to be a balance between what the agencies are doing and what we're doing. There is this review process, and perhaps we ought to have legislators as part of that panel. I think that would be a very interesting and valuable exercise. But to have us second-guessing agencies, I think might mess up the good work that they do and interfere with the work that we're charged with doing for 140 days every 2 years in a $2 trillion economy. I don't know if you're advocating for a year-round legislature. I don't think
Certainly
you are.
not.
I don't think you are. But I can imagine it's
Certainly not.
80 hours a week year-round to try to keep up with the workload here. So I don't want to keep us here for a while, but I also want to echo Senator Nichols' recognition of the fact that we do have some influence over the agencies, and part of the extra work that maybe we ought to be doing more is paying more attention to what's going on at agencies, visiting with them in person. I passed a bill last session that's not getting implemented. We've had 3 meetings. It's been bicameral. I think it's going to get implemented now, but it is. I think it's part of our work, and maybe the solution is just more individual action with agencies rather than a new structure. But I do think you've raised an important point, and I'm happy to continue the dialogue.
No, Senator, look, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that very much. Just like I thought Senator Nichols' comments were very thoughtful, and this is the feedback that we as a body need to take and work in crafting something like this. So really appreciate that very much. And certainly we'll never support a full-time legislature, that's for sure.
Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to answer your question about how rule writing and rule review occurs, for those boards and commissions that deal with market participants, there was a court case out of North Carolina, I think back in 15-16, that compelled all the states to make sure that there was a mechanism in place that market participants were not being excluded by virtue of the makeup of boards and commissions related to certain professions, dental, others. So in 2019, I had a bill that did that specifically gave the governor the ability to put somebody in charge of reviewing those rules for market participants. And that type of structure did work. The governor's done a great job with that. In fact,
you bet.
One modification to it this go-around. But that is the one area where there is a rule review team in place in the executive branch specific to just those decisions that relate to market participants. But the broader spectrum is not yet been addressed. So I wanted to let you know that.
Great. Members, any other questions of the author? Hearing none, we're going to open up public testimony for SJR 57. Anyone wish to testify? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. We're going to leave this bill pending. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Springer. Anatomical Board. All right. Chair lays out
Deathly serious bill.
2040.
right? 2040 by Senator Springer, and you are recognized on the Anatomical Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This is the sunset bill for the state's Sunset Anatomical Board. The Sunset Commission recommends the abolishment of the State Sunset Anatomical Board as a standalone board and transfers those functions to the Texas Funeral Service Commission. As part of the recommendation, willed body programs and non-transplant anatomical donation organizations would be registered with the Funeral Service Commission. And statutes would require those non-transplant anatomical donations, NADOs, to be accredited by the American Association of Tissue Banks. We have expert witnesses that can speak to the bill, including Sunset staff. Specifically, there is a 7-member board. Both the WBPs and the NADOs will register with the funeral service. It requires registrants to obtain informed donor consent and requires tracking and record keeping from intake to final disposal, requires the NADOs to be accredited by the American Association of Tissue Banks, and exempts NADOs from certain regulatory requirements, including inspections, authorizes the Funeral Commission to enforce the SAB's statutory Chapter 691 and the Health and Safety Codes, establish a fee for facility inspections, and prohibits members and licensees from owning more than 10% interest in the NADOs. Now, it is working its way as well through the House right now, and there are a couple changes that are being discussed. One of them is taking that 10% down to zero, so there would be no ownerships in these outside groups. And an additional one that we are requesting is that there would be a clear disclosure on those that use the NADOs, that your body may most likely not stay completely together and reunited as it does with the whole body program. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And as I said, we have several witnesses as well as Sunset staff that can testify to it as well. But Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your chairmanship also on the Sunset Commission in helping with this, especially as a doctor that had practiced and sees the value in having these available for our students and those to learn from. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members, questions? Thank you, sir. Chair opens up public testimony. Stephen Batschi, John Hubbard, Carrie Gilbert, and Laura Johnson. And there's we have a resource witness from the Texas Funeral Service Commission, Executive Director James White. Welcome.
Morning.
Please state your name, position, and begin.
My name is Stephen Beige. I'm the Vice President of Tissue Management for Science Care, and Science Care supports this bill. To clarify, we support the intent of the bill as it seeks to update legislation to account for entities which have emerged since the statute was last revised. We also support the intent to provide clarity with regard to how oversight and regulation should occur to prevent the emergence of bad actors in this arena. One of the requirements within the bill Science Care wholeheartedly supports is that any and all non-university body programs acting as NADOs in Texas be accredited by the American Association of Tissue Banks. We feel this is important to safeguard the citizens of Texas from becoming victims to bad actors who tend to appear in the form of entities which are both non-state or government-affiliated organizations and are not accredited. While we do support the bill in its intent, we also believe that the bill may benefit from some revisions to provide further statutory guidance to the TFSC regarding its obligations to the citizens of Texas, and to help ensure the legislation passed into law is both clear and effective in its intent and enforcement. As the bill currently reads, the language clarifying and differentiating between responsibilities and obligations of the TFSC as they relate to the TFSC's duty to facilitate will body programs within the state of Texas, as opposed to the TFSC's duty to perform oversight of accredited NADOs operating within the state of Texas, may be beneficial. Revised language which clarifies and bifurcates the TFSC's duties as they relate to facilitation of WBPs from its simple oversight of NADOs would aid in reducing the burden imposed on the TFSC while making the proposed legislation truer to its intent. There are some other less consequential items which may benefit from clarity as well, such as Section 1.172, which speaks to specific labeling. But in the interest of brevity, I'll close by stating I thank the committee for its time and attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. This Sunset Bill does require all NADOs to be certified, correct?
Accredited, yes, sir.
Accredited, I mean, that's what. Okay. Mr. Hubbard?
Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony this morning on Senate Bill 2040. I'm Dr. John Hubbard, the elected chair of the Anatomical Board of the state of Texas. On behalf of the Anatomical Board, I wish to express our appreciation for the courtesies and professionalism the Sunset Review staff extended to us during their review. We also recognize and appreciate the work that Senator Springer, his Senate colleagues, and their staffs have put forward in drafting this bill. We look forward to continued interaction with Senator Springer and this committee in formulating needed revisions of this bill pertaining to Chapter 691 of the Texas Health and Safety Code. It is and always will be the stance of the Anatomical Board that donated human bodies and the families of these donors deserve to be handled in all transactions with the utmost dignity and respect. I am confident that there are others within the Sunset Commission and this Senate Committee on Business and Commerce who are of the same view. It is with this joint conviction that the state of Texas must continue to effectively exercise oversight over any and all entities operating whole body donation facilities and verify that all entities receiving, preparing, transferring, or distributing donated human bodies are subject to and accountable by the state of Texas to the same equitable standards, whether these entities are housed in academic health institutions or operating as independent corporate entities. If the Anatomical Board is transitioned into the Texas Funeral Services Commission as an advisory committee, it is vital that formal authority be established in statute to grant the subject matter experts currently provided by the Anatomical Board the power to develop rules, regulations, policies, procedures for the governance of all will body donation programs and the usage of and final disposition of human cadavers in our state. Specifically, we requested reevaluation of the proportionality of the community assignments to reflect the proportion of whole body and NATOs currently operating and registered and accredited in the state, and re-examine the exemption of fees that are going to pay the operational expenses for governance of these programs.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. Any members, any questions? Mr. Gilbert?
Chairman Swertner, Vice.
Grab the microphone, sir.
Chairman Swertner, Vice Chair King, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on this issue today. My name is Kerry Gilbert. I'm a member of the State Anatomical Board. I'm a physical therapist by licensure and an anatomist by training. Listen, we have a tremendous opportunity with Senate Bill 2040, and I appreciate Senator Springer's work here. The focus here really needs to be on the dignity and respect of treating these donor bodies. I think we would all agree that people that have the altruism to donate their body for medical training, as a physician, you understand the importance of these trainings, and we agree. This regulation, we have an opportunity to strengthen this regulation that hasn't been updated in over 40 years. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be involved with this. Ultimately, if the regulation is going to strengthen the oversight of the use of this resource, which is so important, then there needs to be the consideration of oversight where there needs to be a trust and verify. So, for instance, if certain groups are exempted from certain standards, there still needs to be the opportunity for the Funeral Services Commission to trust but verify those things. Currently, there's not the opportunity for the Funeral Services Commission to inspect a certain organization unless there's a complaint. I think that should be something that we could consider in giving the regulatory authority for inspection at any point, at any given time, in effort to respect the donors. Ultimately, I'm here to try to be part of the solution. We have a tremendous amount of expertise, and we want to be part of the solution. So I appreciate your attention. If there's anything that I personally can do or we can do to try to help move this bill forward in a way that protects the donors, we would be interested in that. So thank you for your consideration. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Members, questions? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. My name is Laura Johnson, and I am here as a private citizen. I am an anatomist, and I've moved here recently from Missouri. I was part of your Sunset Commission because I was the secretary-treasurer of the State Anatomical Board in Missouri, but I'm not affiliated here. I am speaking on behalf of our donors and their loved ones. These are deceased people. If you don't have inspections, and if you give away Texas authority to another entity, you are abdicating your role. Different regulations occur for the protection of human subjects in other areas. When this occurs between the Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA, their recommendation is that whatever regulation protects the human subjects is what should be followed. And so I ask you to reconsider whether or not exemption, and specifically there's an exemption where, if the commission or the committee thinks it's appropriate, or if they suspect anything, then the commission can go and inspect. Well, the problem with that is these are dead people. How is that suspicion going to come to the committee, right? The second thing I want to make you aware of on a national level is that there are kickbacks and referral fees that are legal. It occurs where hospices are paid to refer a decedent or an individual to register with a for-profit company because they will pay a few $100s to that hospice. That completely takes away I was so excited to read in this bill that you care about informed consent so much, and not having a provision prohibiting that is going to cut off your informed consent at the knees. And that's because it creates a coercive environment where an NADO can, okay, sorry.
Members, questions? Senator Zaffarini.
Specifically, what would you like prohibited?
What I want prohibited is it's sort of like when a physician is not allowed to, get paid by a pharmaceutical company to, pay for a drug, right? And that's the drug that they prescribe to patients. I'm asking for prohibiting the ability of an entity to pay a hospice, nursing home, whoever that is ultimately helping people at the end of their life to make a decision about their final disposition of their body, right? And so I'm asking to prohibit a financial interest in that. It happens across the country, and I know people who get calls from funeral homes, and these are academic donation programs. They get calls from funeral homes. What are you going to do for me? Right? How are you going to pay me so that I refer a person to donate to your program? And you, as an academic program, you lose out on donors just because they don't know about it. What it allows for is for a funeral home to just not mention that there are other options. Right? It allows for somebody to, well, this is a much better program without the donor actually knowing that there's a financial incentive there, right, for that nursing home.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Members, questions of the committee? Hearing none, we do have Mr. James White, Executive Director, Texas Funeral Service Commission here. Any questions of him? Hearing none, we're going to close public testimony and leave this bill pending. Thank y'all. Chair lays out
613.
Senate Bill 613 by Senator Springer. You're recognized. And there is a committee substitute. Senator Birdwell sends up a committee substitute, and we'll go ahead and adopt it without objection. You're recognized on the bill and sub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The real estate market, much as all other markets, is evolving immensely with the advent of online technologies. One creative solution in the real estate market is to offer homeowners the chance to sell their home, but to remain in their home and maintain the option even to purchase it at a later date. The bill allows for the selling off and then renting back of the house without the sellback and rent being considered or subject to the home financing loan regulations. And this is, and there's several companies that are doing these type of programs. And this looks to clarify that the buyers and sellers that have already been entering into these transactions, it seeks to further clarify it. The substitute adds a line into section 41006 to grant the ability to make purchases inclusive to any non-cash considerations or other things of value. And the substitute also removes the clause from section 41006C that nulls transactions described in subsection A. That includes the option agreements from this section. There is a handout that you have in here. This basically just gives, Texans more options on how they want to live, how they want to deal with the largest asset most people will ever own, their home, and potentially be able to cash out without immediately having to be able to leave. And in some circumstances, they may even want to be able to have the right to buy that house back at a later date. In working from that standpoint. But with that, I know we also have several expert witnesses that may be able to answer more detailed questions on it, but I'm happy to answer any questions for the members at this point.
Members, questions on Senator Springer's bill? Hearing none, we're going to open up public testimony on Senate Bill 613. We have 8 individuals registered. Chair calls Ann Bedore, Robin Zeke, Adam Pogash. Pogash. John Fleming. Ms. Bador.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Ann Bador. I'm the Director of the Fair Financial Services Project at Texas Appleseed, and I'm testifying in opposition to Senate Bill 613. While I do agree with Senator Springer that people need options, people don't need options that take away their rights. And I'm concerned in reading this bill that with the change it could bring back some predatory practices that were a problem more than 3 decades ago, that the provision in the law was put into place to address. So sale leaseback provisions have always been concerning as a workaround from our usury laws. And what concerns me is the addition of non-cash value, because that is something so nebulous and it's hard to put your finger on it. And people are giving up their homesteads, the equity in their homesteads for this. And I want to point you to a couple of things. If you turn to the second page of my testimony, the Google ads, you can see that these products are presented to people who search for them as refinances. And so there's a lot of confusion on the part of the user as to what kind of transaction this is. And then if you flip to the second page, that shows how these transactions work out. And just to be very concise, people get a very small amount of the equity. You can see in this transaction, 56.7% of the equity as part of the sale. And they end up, if you look at the bottom of the blue bar, there's an $85,000 payment, but after all the fees are taken out, the homeowner ends up with $58,000. So $150,000 or $140,000 in equity, $58,000. After the lease provisions, if the person cannot maintain the lease, they're evicted. And this non-cash value is in the pink box, the $65,000 in remaining equity. That often ends up disappearing. What will happen is people will get evicted. The house will be sold for that $85,000 or $89,000 owed to this company, and they lose that $65,000 in equity. It's really concerning, and I see this as an equity stripping measure for low-income families with high equity properties.
Thank you. Robin Z.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to wait to ask questions of the whole panel?
Senator Zaffarini, no, you're recognized, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of...
1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Zaffarini.
If this bill were to pass, do you think it would allow practices such as those that we prohibited when we prohibited wraparound mortgages?
I think it's a home equity version of a wraparound mortgage, because the way that the financing structure works, so that $85,000 that's fronted, the middleman, the company that's selling this, will take out a loan from a third party to fund that. And so then when they sell the property, and they're collecting fees to pay any interest, so that the person is paying all the costs that they have. And then when the house is finally sold, they use the money to pay off that note. So it's almost like a home equity version of a wraparound mortgage.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. E.
Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, my name is Robin Zeke. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Texas and have been licensed for more than 37 years. I, along with Adam Pogash, represent consumers that are complaining about these sale lease transactions against companies who provide these types of loans. I formerly represented banks in the late 80s that were the ones who came up with this creative financing transaction to get around or to skirt the usury laws. I'm speaking out in opposition to Senate Bill 613. This bill reopens a problem in the lending industry that was resolved 30 years ago. The requested changes to Section 41.006 of the Texas Property Code do not clarify any issue, but basically muddy the water. To understand this issue, you need to fully appreciate what these transactions are. These transactions are transactions in which a consumer never receives more than between 20 and 70% of their net equity in their home. The option correlates to the net equity that is not taken out of their home and is essentially a plug figure on a HUD statement to ensure that they meet the first prong of Section 41.006 and that they have the lender has paid fair appraised value for the consumer's homestead. The typical consumers who enter into these types of contracts are unsophisticated consumers, low-income wage earners with bad credit, but they have one asset, their home. Their home usually has substantial equity in it, and they get into these transactions when they're desperate and have fallen upon hard times. They think they are getting a home equity loan across the board, only to learn the following after this closes. That
Thank
they
you.
lose title to their house.
Thank you, ma'am. Adam?
Thank you. My name is Adam Pogash. I'm an attorney from Houston, Texas, together with my co-counsel, Robin Zeke, who is also here to testify today. We represent more than 24 Texas homeowners in litigation arising out of these types of sale-leaseback transactions. We are vehemently opposed to Senate Bill 613. We view the proposed changes as attempting to legitimize equity stripping schemes designed to skirt the constitutional homestead, common law, and statutory protections afforded Texas homeowners. The proponents of this bill have represented does not change the current state of the law, that it somehow only offers clarity. In my opinion, this is not a correct statement of Texas law. We are fortunate to live in the great state of Texas where the Constitution protects the homestead rights of its citizens. Among other things, Article 16, Section 50, prohibits pretend sales of homestead properties involving any condition of defeasance. The condition of defeasance is a contract clause, like an option contract to repurchase your home, that states the property's title will be transferred back to the original homeowner when they satisfy payment conditions from the new owner. Liens like that created by sale-leaseback transactions on homestead properties which contain option contracts are void under the Texas Constitution. Those sale-leaseback transactions are considered unsecured loans, and the homeowners are protected by the Texas Finance Code to ensure that any charges and fees comply with our usury laws. Section 41.006 further protects homestead owners by ensuring that if they enter into a sale-leaseback transaction, they must receive the full value of their property in cash. The purchase price of their home must be the appraised fair value of their property, and the homeowner must not be charged more than the fair rental value for their property to lease it back. If the homeowner doesn't receive the fair value or is charged more than fair value, the deed is void, it is deemed a deceptive practice under the DTPA, and the transaction is further subject to usury penalties. This bill seeks to undermine these constitutional and statutory protections. Specifically, the proposed changes seek to exempt option contracts entirely from these protections, and the bill permits homestead owners to be paid only a fraction of the value rather than the full value of their homes in cash.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fleming?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Zaffarini?
could you please expand on what is a pretend sale?
Pretend sale is a sale like this. Homeowners are in a terrible situation. They don't have the ability because of either low income, not having enough savings. For whatever reason, they don't qualify for a traditional loan, but they have equity in their home. And so in order to finance that transaction, other companies will come in, these companies from out of state, some of them backed by hedge funds in New York, will come into Texas, try to strip away the equity from these homeowners by saying, I'm going to take possession of title to your home. I'm going to give you a certain fraction of the value of your home. Usually it's somewhere between no more than 70% of the value of your home, but it's oftentimes, we have cases where it's somewhere in the range of 15 to 20% of your home. And what makes it a pretend sale is they're just essentially taking deed as security for the repayment of the rent until you decide what you're going to do with your property, whether that is going to be to try to purchase it back. But when they're coming in and why we call it equity stripping and pretend sales and why the law does under the Constitution, it says if you have an option to repurchase, that's a cloud on that title. That new purchaser, whoever gave you the money, who agreed to do this sale leaseback with you, isn't actually the clear, doesn't have clear title to the property. Somebody has an option and a right to get that title back. Under most of these transactions that I've seen, they have not filed that option in the real property records. So if that tenant is evicted from this house, for whatever reason, they don't go through a judicial foreclosure, they just get evicted, their house is already in the name of this new owner, and in the record, in the public record, there is no record that that option exists. So title companies who are out there selling this property to some new owner, they have no idea that somebody might have a claim to the title of that property. And what happens is now you're putting title insurance in play. You're putting whether that new purchaser is going to come in and get it. That's why the Constitution says if you're going to put a lien on a homestead property, if you're going to have an option contract, you got to know, I don't care if it says deed on the sale. What it really is a pretend sale. It's a loan. It is a way to finance something that is not a traditional financing. And it's a way to skirt the banking regulations that exist. In most cases, you have lenders who have to make sure that these people who they're going to do business with would qualify to be able to repurchase their home or to be able to pay off the loan. That doesn't occur here. We have cases where clients are making, at the most they've ever made in their lives, $20,000 a year. And they're being strapped to rental payments that are $19,000 a year. That can't be. You can't have a situation where it's set up to fail. It is set up so that eventually they're going to get evicted. And in the law that they've constructed exempts option contracts from the protections under 41.006 that ensure homeowners are going to get 100% of the appraised value of their home at the time they do these sale-leaseback transactions. If companies want to come into Texas from out of state and do these transactions, 41.006 says this is how you can do it. You pay people 100% of the value of their property and you lease it back at a fair rental rate. If you want to charge them some additional amount for the option, fine, but it ought to be a reasonable option amount. As long as you're giving them 100% of the value, the cash value of the home, you are protecting the homeowner's equity. They can continue to live in the home, but that's not what these people are promising to do. They're coming in and they're promising to give them some small fraction of that value. And oftentimes, they're doing so at fair rental value that isn't actually fair rent, or they're charging rent that's not fair rental value. And that's because the homeowner, though they're not physically writing the check anymore for insurance for the home, they're not physically writing the property tax payment every year, they are still the ones who are responsible for it, because the companies who are coming in and doing that are going to just charge the homeowner that as part of the rent. And if you take out as much as 70% of the value of your home, you're going to wind up having to pay whoever you've engaged this sale-leaseback transaction with. You're going to wind up having to pay interest on the mortgage that they took out to lend you the money to go do this. Plus, you're going to pay property taxes. Plus, you're going to pay insurance, all to cover their covering costs while you're renting your own home. And what are they doing to secure those covering costs? They're taking your equity. And at the back end of the transaction, there's no guarantee under this bill. There is zero guarantee under this bill that the difference between what they pay you, if they're going to give you 20% of the value of your home on day one of this closing, there's nothing protecting that other 80% of the value. You have an option, but you know that they're preying on people who are unable to qualify for traditional loans. What is the likelihood they're going to be able to go pay that off? I think we've heard testimony from some of these folks in the House committee yesterday that somewhere between only 20 and 30% actually ever buy their house back. And whether that's because it's being sold voluntarily because they can't afford the rent payments or because they want to cash in, we have many, many clients who on the back end of these transactions get absolutely nothing for what is supposed to be their retained equity stake. The law was put in place to protect exactly this, to make sure that if you're going to engage in one of these things, get 100% of the cash on the front end. At closing, get 100% of the cash, charge a fair rent, and you can comply with Texas law. But that's not what these people are proposing to do. The change would say, as long as I give you something of value, I don't have to describe what that is. As long as it's something of value, I don't have to pay you for dollar what your house is worth. That's not what 4106 is designed to do. It was designed specifically to protect against this type of behavior. So I view these things as a way to try to skirt the constitutional protections on pretend sales. And I hope that answers your question.
It does. You said that only 30% of the homeowners reacquire their property. Do you know of those who don't, how many are eventually evicted or have their options terminated?
I can tell you that in the transactions that I'm aware of from one of the proponents of this bill, the transaction only ends one of two ways. Either the homeowner repurchased the home and they are deemed to have exercised their option, and we know that only 20 to 30%, according to this company, actually do so in Texas, for whatever reason. Or if they either default and get evicted, which we have plenty of folks who have had that happen, then what happens to them is it's deemed as if they had exercised their option, and the home is sold, and the company that engages in these transactions is under absolutely no obligation to resell the home at fair value. So that 80% of equity or 40% of equity or whatever that was supposed to be the retained stake, that's supposed to be protected on the back end, that whenever it's sold, the upside is supposed to be theirs. That's supposed to be their retained equity stake. And we have a number of folks that we represent who received absolutely no value, and most of the people who have received any value on the back end, it's a far cry from what they were promised.
Well, your description of your opposition is vehement, certainly is obvious.
Thank you.
Is there any way to fix this bill, in your opinion?
I think it's a bill that is apparently looking to fix a problem that doesn't exist. It is designed to allow somebody to skirt the law. There is no need to fix this bill. This bill says if you are engaged in sale-leaseback transactions and you pay somebody 100% of the value of their home and you charge them fair market rent, these transactions are legal. Who wants to stop that from happening? If people want to do that, that's fine. At least you know that they got the value of their home out of their homestead, and they're staying in their home and being charged a market rate. The law works as it is. Why are we trying to change it?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Mr. Fleming?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. John Fleming, Texas Mortgage Bankers, testifying on the bill. There's a Supreme Court case called Johnson versus Cherry that originated in Shelby County, Senator Nichols, and involved the Bank of Tatum, in which the Supreme Court of Texas declared that any time you have a sale-leaseback transaction, it could constitute a pretend sale. And in that case, it found the transaction was a pretend sale and divested the purchaser of title and restored it to the original owner. And that's where we get our problem. And it's like this. Original owner sells their property to Blue Sky Capital. The original owner defaults on their lease payment, gets evicted within a short-term 3-day, 30-day process. Blue Sky Title then sells property to John Fleming. John Fleming then takes a mortgage out from the Bank of Reclaw. At that point in time, the original homeowner, after I've already bought it, brings suit to declare the original transaction void. For the period of time that is ongoing, title to my property is now clouded, even though I had no idea that this was going on. My lender's security interest is of concern and potentially voidable. There may be title insurance. The title insurance may pick up and reimburse me, but at the same time, I lose my home. And that's the problem. And this could take years to resolve. And there is a potential fix in order to give these property owners some protections similar to those that exist under the home equity laws. And I know you need to hurry on, so I'm happy to discuss that at a later date.
Members' questions? Senator Zaffarini?
What is
Senator
that
Middleton.
potential fix?
I think consideration could be given to an amendment to the statute that provided that before the lease agreement could be terminated and the option to purchase could be terminated, that the leaseback landlord would have to obtain an order from the district court determining that the lease truly was terminated, that the option to repurchase was truly terminated. That would frame up and give everybody an opportunity in a district court to determine whether or not this was a pretend sale or a legitimate sale-leaseback transaction.
Would you worry that if this bill passed, that we would have practices such as those forbidden when we passed the wraparound mortgage bill?
Yes, ma'am.
And what practices would those be other than what we've heard today?
Well, I think you've heard them.
We've heard them all.
But the answer is yes.
Do you know how homeowners are attracted to participate in these transactions?
I think Ms. Bador may have covered that in her testimony. I think it's the way they set up their algorithms to advertise online. You'll have to ask them how they do that.
All
But
right.
in their marketing, I think they're looking at people who are seeking alternatives to home equity lending or other refinancing options.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Middleton and Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Chair. So, we've talked a lot about litigation here today. What's the basis? Every lawsuit's different, of course, but what's the most common basis for bringing suit here? Yeah.
Is that addressed to me?
Yes.
I'm happy to answer. I just didn't want to make sure. I want to make sure you're addressing it. So I think what Ms. Bador was covering earlier is most of these people who are interacting with these types of companies are in a desperate situation. They may be facing foreclosure. They may have medical bills, some other, loss of job, loss of income, anything that has caused a need to tap into the equity of your home. Some of them, it's merely just, I need money to go remodel something in my house, or I need a new roof. I need something, but I don't have the ability because I don't qualify to get a traditional home equity loan. And so they will go online. They will look for how do I refinance? I want to do some refinancing and I have bad credit. And they will see Google ads saying, if you own your own home, refinance with bad credit if you have a $150,000 house or more. And that is a Google ad that our customers have sent, some of my clients have sent me. They get illustrations that say from EasyKnock. Their first interaction with EasyKnock is the company that we're in litigation with. The first interaction with this particular company is an illustration beyond the Google ad. So I guess it's the second interaction. The Google ad's the first. The illustration then says, here's what the value of your home is. Here's how much we're willing to give you. Here's what your retained equity stake is going to be. And it's a fancy illustration. And these homeowners look at it and they say, oh, according to the illustration, I can stay in my home until I decide to leave. And they think they're doing some sort of newfangled home equity loan and that this is okay. They don't realize until the very next thing they do is they sign a contract. And that contract gives up their rights to their home. And they don't necessarily appreciate what they're doing. They think they're just going to get a portion of their home, and they're going to get of their home's value. They're going to retain that equity stake. And in reality, the second that they sign that contract, they've signed away the rights to their home. It's an agreement to sell their home to EasyKnock. And what happens is when they go to closing, these closings, the signings are all electronic. They're happening via Adobe DocuSign. So these people are just sitting in their homes on the internet, signing away their homes. And then the closings are often, at least for our clients, have been remote. A notary will come to their house sometimes, and they will sign documents in 5 or 10 minutes, signing away the rights to their homes. And for most of our clients, they didn't receive a single disclosure or interaction with the company that says, hey, you should be forewarned. Here's the rights. Here's what the options are. None of the things that the Constitution protects in connection with homesteads. And these things are happening remotely. In fact, they're happening remotely, and there's a bar on filing these options in the contract. In all of our contracts, they say you're not allowed to file this option in the real property records. That's a requirement of the real property records code, the property code. Under Chapter 5, you're supposed to. So what has happened since we filed suit? The company has reached out to our clients and is looking to get actual ink signatures from our clients on these documents so that they can go file them in the real property records, because they've now sold homes to third parties who have taken them thinking that they're unencumbered by liens. Title companies have come around thinking that these properties are unencumbered by liens, and they've sold them without these options being actually recorded. So whether these homeowners who get stripped of their homes, not realizing what they're doing, still have rights, these things should have been recorded, should have been done on the front end, but they're not. And so every step of the way, the basis is that they're not aware of what they're doing. In fact, I have one client who told me every step of the way they were told they were still going to be the owners of the home, that the company that they were entering into business with was just being added to the deed for the security for the repayment of their obligations under the contract. They were told very specifically it was a home equity loan and not a sale leaseback. They had no idea. These aren't sophisticated people.
It sounds like this may be more related to DTPA claim and not this bill, though. And I think that's maybe the difference here is, obviously if someone's intent to defraud somebody, then they should be held accountable for that, right? But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about an arm's length transaction, arm's length contractual transaction, right?
Except that's what I disagree with you. I think you're right. It is a DTPA claim, but where I disagree with you is that it doesn't implicate Section 41.006. Right. Because in 41.006, if you violate that statute by paying less than 100% of the value of the home as a purchase price, or you charge more than the fair market rent, it is considered a deceptive trade under the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. And that's what's in that statute. So it very much is a DTPA claim, and it very much is a Section 41.006 problem. This is why we shouldn't change the law. That law is designed to protect exactly this situation. If we allow this law to stay in place, we will make sure that any sale leaseback transactions that take place, the homeowner will get 100% of the equity of their home, and they will only be charged a fair market rate. And that's a good arm's length transaction. That's what this statute says. That's not a deceptive trade.
But we do see foreclosures where homes are sold for less than the person has in it. Sometimes it's even below the appraised value with the CAD. So that happens outside of this, with traditional foreclosures on a mortgage or some other type of home equity loan or whatnot. So, that does occur. I'm not sure how this bill's impacting that, because it's outside of this bill, right? That's the traditional process for mortgages and home equity loans where bad things happen, and it can be sold for less than you've got in it, or less than the market value.
Right, but
less than the CAD value.
If the homeowner had already received the full value of the price of their home in cash, then they would be protected. If they run into financial problems after that transaction and can't afford the rent, they've at least received the equity value of their home, and that's just happenstance. Bad things sometimes happen. But that is not the same thing as somebody only receiving a fraction of the value of their home and not having the protections afforded by the Constitution or by this statute under the property code to make sure that they receive the full value of their home. So we're actually creating a problem you're compounding that problem that you just described. You're saying, I'm going to allow them not to get the full value of their home and to fall further into financial problems, and so they might not ever get the value out of their home.
Can I also just add something very simple?
No, you can't.
No.
Senator Nichols.
This is to John. Two questions, fairly short.
Yes.
On licensing, mortgage lenders have to be licensed in the state of Texas.
Yes, sir.
So do these people have to be licensed in any manner?
No, Senator.
No?
No.
Okay, that's the second question is, I would listen real carefully when you first started, and you said you're here on the bill.
Yes, sir.
But every bit of your testimony sounded like you did not like the bill.
I'm troubled by the bill, but I think it's fixable.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Members, other questions of the panel? Thank y'all. Chair calls Kachana Ling, Chris Davis, Andy Williams, and Randy Lee for the last four witnesses on this bill, Senator Springer's bill. Ms. Ling?
Does it matter which order?
I called your name, I think, first.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak in support of SB 613. My name is Kanchana Leung, and I'm the General Counsel of EasyKnock. We operate a technology-enabled sale-leaseback business to help consumers obtain cash to bridge their short-term financial needs. The current system is broken because it doesn't provide enough financial solutions for consumers who are asset-rich but cash-poor. For most Americans, their wealth is tied up in their homes. However, 1 in 4 homeowners can't access their equity to get cash because they don't qualify for home equity loans. The alternative to home equity loans, selling the house and moving, can be undesirable for consumers who don't want to uproot their families. It's against this backdrop that technology-enabled sale-leasebacks fill the void as a responsible source of liquidity and a supporter of neighborhood stability. With the sale-leaseback, families are able to get cash to meet their needs while continuing to benefit from the amenities of their local communities and deciding on their next steps. These transactions help consumers avoid high interest or predatory alternatives such as payday or hard money loans. EasyKnock is committed to Texas. As property owners ourselves, we pay millions of dollars per year in property taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA dues, and repair and maintenance costs, expenses that consumers are relieved of when they do a sale-leaseback. For example, in connection with Winter Storm Uri, we paid for all the home repairs while also going the extra mile, paying for hotel rooms for displaced tenants and sending them food and bottled water. It is important to know that EasyKnock is not the only firm in this space. Companies like Truehold, Balance Homes, Sell to Rent, and others are also doing sale-leasebacks, and others are moving into the space as well. That's why we think it's important that SB 613 clarifies for the entire community that the Texas Property Code recognizes that non-cash things of value are considered in whether a home is purchased at or above market value. This clarification regarding non-cash consideration does not change the law, but rather codifies existing case law that says that option contracts have value. It also tracks with other real estate.
Members' questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Zaffarini.
you just mentioned non-cash consideration. How is that calculated?
It can be anything of value, right? This is a concept that is in our statutes everywhere. I'll give an example, like the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, right? That prohibits paying for mortgage referrals, and it says that you cannot, pay a referral pay for a mortgage referral, and it's interpreted of anything of value, right? So anything, it doesn't have to be cash. It could be, gifts and entertainment. It could be concessions. And so this concept of non-cash consideration, things of value, is common. It should not be controversial that if it has something of value, that should be considered. A prior witness was talking about, cadavers and not being able to pay for kickbacks or referrals. All the referral and kickback statutes also consider other things of value that are not cash. So this concept and this clarification is not anything different than that.
Thank you. Do you know what percentage of consumers reacquire their homes?
I don't have that statistic handy right now. Historically, and I can follow up with your office after this, it has been about 1 in 3. But I will say that most of our transactions have been in the past couple of years, and so the tenants have not actually exercised their option yet. They're still in the period of tenancy where they're trying to decide what to do. The point is, though, that they have the option, the right, and not the obligation to repurchase. And for some consumers, they might not want to repurchase, right? So I'll give you a use case where that makes sense. Say there is a divorcing couple, and they need to split the marital assets. So they have to sell the house and split the proceeds. But one parent wants to stay in the house and stay in that school district, right? So they can sell the house, rent it back, and then after a couple years, their children, they've graduated out of high school, and they decide they don't need to be in that district anymore. So in that situation, they don't want to repurchase, but they have the right to do it if they want to, but it's their choice. And that's the point, too, about why we're in Texas. Texas is known to be very business friendly, right? Not a state where you're paternalistic about what consumers can or cannot do, but giving them the choice to decide for themselves. And so we think it's important that the clarification in the statute recognizes that anything of value, whether it's an option contract or something else, whether it's a seller concession, whether it's, a fully furnished house and you're reducing the price by, that amount, that is considered in whether the purchase price is at fair market value.
Thank you. Of those who don't reacquire their homes, do you know what percentage are either terminated, have their leases terminated or options terminated, or eventually evicted?
Our eviction statutes are very low. For our company, it's less than 1%, which I believe is well below the national average.
And how do you attract people to your transactions?
So I think it's typical marketing, like anything else. We have a website that people can find. Again, this bill is not just about our company. People can go online and search for alternatives for how to get cash using the value of their house. They could find our competitors. They could find other products. This is an arm's length transaction. I've heard a lot of criticism from the plaintiff's attorneys about our fees and our structure. We don't have a pre-existing relationship with these people.
What is your fee?
We have a processing fee, which is about 4.99%.
Processing fee?
Yes,
Uncapped on whatever value?
on the purchase price. On the purchase price. But like I said, this bill is not about our company
It's
in
fine.
particular.
You answered your question.
So if I
Senator
wanted to
Zaffarini?
find your website or any other similar website by another company, what keywords would I use?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for letting me be here today. My name is Chris Davis. I am a partner with the law firm of Gray Reed. I've been a Texas CPA for the past 23 years. Before coming here, I spent a decade as a prosecutor for the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, where I focused heavily on fraudulent transactions detrimental to consumers. Even today, I represent whistleblowers. I support this bill because it makes important clarifications to Texas law for the benefit of the market and those consumers. As you may know, sale-leasebacks have been common in the commercial market for years, but have become more prevalent in the residential market because of needs created by the lack of other lending alternatives. For instance, after the passage of Dodd-Frank at the federal level, which actually happened when I was with the government, right before I joined, many of these alternatives like home equity loans became unavailable. That's why these types of alternatives exist, why they're good for consumers, and why this clarity would be good here. And this is where I want to diverge a little bit from my prepared remarks based on what I heard earlier. I think the dialogue we heard before I came up is exactly why this clarification would be beneficial. It's totally non-controversial that non-cash consideration should be considered in any contract. I could give you a stack of cases this high for just that general contract law principle. And with options in particular, there are cases in Texas state court, there are cases in federal courts in this district, and there's a notable case from the Fourth Circuit that analyzes situations just like this and says, if I give you the option to buy something below market value, that has value. It's almost common sense. So I'm taken aback by the wave of information that we heard before I came up here by clients who were solicited with that same information. I would appreciate the opportunity to address those remarks. But the bottom line is this bill is good for consumers. It gives them choices. It represents the values that Texas stands for. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Members' questions? Mr. Williams?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Andy Williams. I'm a fourth-generation Texan, did 4 years in the Marine Corps, and I've been in real estate for about 20 years, and I support this bill for two reasons. We have a lot of growth happening, and what this bill actually does, it unlocks equity for our hard-earned Texans who's gained appreciation, and oftentimes they're denied by traditional banks. And I live this every day because I'm a chairman of a CDC. I also am a chairman of the CDFI, and I sit on the State Board of Affordable Housing. We have a huge issue and a huge problem. And what this bill does also, and I want to shed light to the essential workers, the firefighters, the EMT, the essential people that are not making a lot of income, but they were lucky enough to buy a house 15, 20 years ago, and life happens. Sometimes you need a level set life. And it's frustrating when you have $150,000, $200,000 in equity and you can't access it, and you're watching situations happen and you want to tap that equity, but you're denied. This bill allows for the ability for an organization like EasyKnock come in, purchase the property, level set them, let them deal with life situations. And when they're able to reset, one thing that is not being discussed is they are actually having wrapped around services, because some of these families have situations that could be addressed, but oftentimes they're having to be displaced. And when I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, and one of the things we're working on right now is with hyper appreciation, how do we deal with those lot of moderate income families and give them resources to capital and access their hard-earned equity so they can level set their lives? So I support this bill for two reasons. Housing is a huge issue. Affordable housing is a bigger issue. And one way to address affordable housing is to keep people in place and give them access to their equity as we grow as a state. Starting a business, sending a kid to college, it's their equity. And the option to buy it back is oftentimes there. And when they buy it back, they're also accessing additional resources.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chairman and members, my name is Randy Lee. Today, I'm here representing Stewart Title Guarantee Company, as I have since the late 80s. I have to admit, I was actually in the room on the home equity legislation when I had never seen a JR become a statute or a statute become a JR. That was a little unusual. And I am on the bill today out of deference to the senator because I did not have the opportunity to visit with him prior to this, have discussed this bill with our legal team last night. So I just wanted to have a very short insertion that we are concerned with. The bill creates uncertainty as to downstream title. I think you've heard that. And while there is a provision in the code, we would like to see a provision in this bill to make sure there is no confusion as to these type of transactions and that the documents should be recorded. So we are on the bill. Unless that is not inserted, then we would be against the bill. So I thank you for your time and good luck.
Thank you. Members, questions? Thank you all very much, panel. Senator Johnson.
Just one quick question. Can someone tell me how we value this non-cash consideration? We have all sorts of statutory protections around home equity loans, home equity lines of credit. This seems a little fuzzier. How do we value this and make sure that the whole industry is operating on the up and up?
You want me to? Yeah. I'd be happy to jump out there as as a CPA, but also as somebody who's familiar with the law. There is actually a case that specifically addresses that point. It's called Calvillo. It's out of the Western District of Texas, and it's pretty simple actually. You take the value of the purchase price that's embedded in the option, and you take the value of the asset, in this case a house, and that difference is the value. It's no different than if I gave you a financial instrument to buy stock. Many people in here will be familiar with warrants or options. If you can buy the stock that's currently priced in the market at $10 for $8, the value of that option is $2. So that's how it's valued here for the purposes of the closing documents as well. For instance, in the HUD closing statement that outlines all the value that's received, including other non-cash value, which in the prior dialogue was not explicit in what you heard in terms of how they're getting to these crazy numbers like 53% interest. That means you don't even get credit for the mortgage I paid off on your behalf. But to your specific question, it's just the difference between the buyback price and the market price.
So it's sort of self-defining.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add that the case law is replete that's how that's calculated. You'll see it in bankruptcy cases with involving options to repurchase. So this is not a new concept that you subtract the option exercise price from the purchase price. It's well established.
Thank you all. Thank you, panel. With that, we're going to leave Senate Bill 6 in closed testimony and leave Senate Bill 603 pending. Senator Birdwell, would you recognize me on Senate Bill? Thank you. 1514.
Chair lays out Senate Bill 1514, recognizes author, Senator Swertner, explain the bill.
Thank you, members. This is the Biennial Business Organization Code amendments. That is an agreed to large bill concerning the Texas Business Organizations Code. It's passed every session by the legislature in some form. It's intended to keep laws relating to the creation and operation of Texas corporations, limited liability companies, partnerships, associations, and other types of business entities in the Business and Commerce Code current so that Texas remains competitive with other business states. Generally, this bill focuses on enhancements to the legal framework for corporations, LLCs, and partnerships. It includes numerous non-substantive modifications that make current provisions more precise and accessible in connection with, overall, the bill encourages the use of Texas-based business entities by keeping the code responsive, up-to-date, user-friendly, and innovative. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Shortner sends up committee substitute.
There is a committee substitute, which makes minor changes to 6 sections of the bill, correcting cross-referencing and drafting errors.
Any questions, Senator Shortner? Senator Zaffarini?
Is there anything in here I should worry about?
If you find something, please let me know.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, we'll open up public testimony on Senate Bill 1514, the committee substitute. We do have some witnesses, Elizabeth Miller, Darrell Robinson, and we have Tracy Cotton with the Secretary of State's office.
Bill's in pretty good shape.
Elizabeth?
If I could I defer
Sure.
to Darrell Robertson and
Absolutely.
additional
Darrell,
comments? Or
please state your name.
I want to thank Chairman Schwartner for sponsoring this bill. I'm a practicing business lawyer in Dallas, Texas, and here on behalf of the Texas Business Law Foundation. It's a 30-year organization of Texas law firms, lawyers, and corporations formed to sponsor and support sensible and basic business laws to foster the growth of Texas economy. One of the examples of the legislation that the foundation has sponsored in the past is the Texas Business Organizations Code, which was a recodification of all the various Texas statutes governing formation of profit and nonprofit entities into one code almost 20 years ago. Every legislative session since then, we've had at least 2 bills where we've updated, tweaked, and made improvements to the code. And this bill is another in the series of that legislation. It contains a number of minor substantive amendments and other non-substantive clarifying and technical amendments. And obviously, I don't have time. It would take me 15 minutes to go through all the different amendments. But I want to thank everyone for your favorable consideration of the bill.
And it shows you do support the bill.
Yes, I'm in support of the bill.
Elizabeth?
My name is Beth Miller. I have taught business organizations law for over 30 years as a full-time faculty member at Baylor Law School, but I'm here on my own behalf. I don't speak for Baylor, but I wanted you to know my interest in this bill. And I've been fortunate for many years to be involved in the process of drafting amendments to drafting the Business Organizations Code, drafting amendments to the Business Organizations Code. I'm grateful to our legislature for its continued refinement and improvement and updating of the code, and for the many hours that practicing business lawyers like Darrell Robertson spend on this effort, and for a very good working relationship with the Texas Secretary of State's office. We have very open communication with the Secretary of State's office and consult with them frequently to make sure that we are considering the impact on them and the perspective that they have. So as Mr. Robertson said, this bill is a collection of technical and clarifying and improving refinements to our code, and I'm happy to answer any questions. They are not amendments that we will read about in the headlines. Thankfully, they are just very important to the business of our state.
Okay, and you are shown for the bill?
I am for the bill, speaking on my own behalf.
Tracy, were you here to testify or just to be a resource?
Just as a resource.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions, any of these witnesses? Thank all of you for coming. Appreciate it. Does anyone else like to testify on for or against Senate Bill 1514, committee substitute? If not, we'll close and leave the bill pending. Chair lays out Senate Bill 1659. Recognize Senator Schwartner to explain it.
Thank you, members. This is a sunset schedule bill that, as we know, sunsets reviews agencies every 12 years. This bill has a number of different agencies that are heavily occupational licensed for the upcoming 2023 or 2032, 2033 biennium, so that the legislature consider all 19 licensing agencies in one session. There is a committee substitute that
Senator Schwartner sends up committee substitute for Senate Bill 1659.
removes, the substitute just removes the change in date for the review of the Texas Civil Commitment Office, as well as removes the change in date for the Texas Lottery Commission, keeping its review during the upcoming biennium.
All right, members, any questions, Senator Swertner? If not, we'd open up for public testimony on Senate Bill 1659, the committee substitute. Only witness I'm showing is Brian Francis. Are you just here for resource? Resource only? Anybody have any questions of him? If not, does anyone else like to testify on for or against Senate Bill 1659, committee substitute? If not, close public testimony and leave the bill pending.
Chair lays out Senate Bill 1119 by Senator Colkhurst, and you're recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This bill comes from actually our finance hearings when I asked the question of the Texas Facility Commission what information they had on the amount of state-owned space and state leased space that is not currently being occupied due to, in part, the increase in teleworking, but just making the best use of the space. The agency did not have any information on that. So SB 119 directs the Legislative Budget Board, in coordination with the Texas Facilities Commission, State Office of Risk Management, and other appropriate agencies to perform the data gathering to conduct a study of all state-owned and state-leased properties, including state agencies of higher education and institutions. The study will identify what the current capacity and use of each space and building is, and what the agency's space and usage was prior to the pandemic. If the agency occupied a different space or building, this bill does not speak to any telework policies at the state agency. It only seeks to find information about space, and we utilize our spaces better, saving the taxpayer money.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions? Now we're going to open up public testimony, Senate Bill 119. No one wishes to testify. Public testimony is closed, and this bill will be left pending. Senator Zaffarini, you recognized on Senate Bill 1639.
Mr. Chairman, members, Senate Bill 1639 relates to prohibitions in connection with event ticket sales or resales on an internet website. Members, a bot, short for robot, and also called an internet bot, is a software application that automatically completes program tasks in the same manner as humans. Normally, bots are created to do repetitive tasks to increase efficiency. Some bots, however, called scalper or scalping bots, use automated methods to obtain event tickets quicker than any legitimate customer should or could. In 2015 and 2016, for example, one person using scalping bots obtained more than 1,000 tickets to a U2 concert in less than 1 minute. Even when scalping bots are not successful, the sheer volume of bots trying to purchase tickets can slow down or disable the ticket website's normal operations. Up to 40% of all event ticket traffic is generated by scalping bots. In January 2023, scalping bots trying to obtain Taylor Swift's Eras Tour tickets contributed to a fiasco that left millions of Swifties without a fair opportunity to see their favorite singer live. These tickets are then resold by the bot's operator in either a private transaction or on a third-party platform, often for an exorbitant markup. Although the 2016 Federal Stop Bots Act outlawed ticket scalping bots, and Senator Colkhurst, you asked about that last time I had a similar bill, the Federal Trade Commission has brought only one action under the law against persons using scalping bots. To address the lack of law enforcement at the federal level, Senate Bill 1639 would prevent ticket scalping from causing market distortion via inflated prices and unfair access to tickets for the general public. Specifically, it would prohibit a person from using methods, technologies, devices, or software that allow him or her to bypass the ticket purchasing process, disguise the identity of the ticket purchaser, exceed the maximum number of tickets that can be sold to one purchaser, or circumvent a security measure or control in the ticket purchasing process. It also would authorize the Attorney General to bring an action to restrain or enjoin a person who is violating or about to violate this bill and to recover reasonable cost for this action. Mr. Chairman, several concerns have been brought to our attention, several suggestions, so we are working on a committee substitute that I do not want to lay out at this time because we'll only have to withdraw it. And so I would ask any witnesses to, if they're interested, hold on till we get the committee substitute.
Okay. Members, questions? Chair opens up public testimony. Lee Moyers with Live Nation, and that's the only individual wishing to testify.
Do you want me to testify, or do you want to hold off for the committee sub? It's up to you.
You should probably testify.
Okay. I'll be quick.
Good morning. It's great to be here. My name is Lee Moyers. I am the Senior Manager of Government Relations for Live Nation. We are the parent company of Live Nation and Ticketmaster. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 1639. It's a common sense consumer protection bill focused on banning the use of bots in the state of Texas. As the Senator mentioned, ticket bots are automated programs used by scalpers to buy large quantities of tickets for popular events such as concerts, sports games, and theater shows. These bots use sophisticated technology to bypass our security systems on the primary ticketing platforms and purchase tickets before legitimate buyers have a chance to get them. This causes a lot of frustration for fans and disappointment. These tickets usually end up on the resale sites at higher prices than the original face value, which is also very frustrating for fans. Consumers, venues, artists, teams are all harmed by continued and frequent use of bots. This bill bans bots and increases enforcement to deter those who break the law, cheating fans and artists in the process. We support this and hope you will too. Happy to answer any questions.
Members, questions? Hearing none, we're going to close public testimony on Senator Zaffarini's bill and leave Senate Bill 1639 pending.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair lays out Senate Bill 986 by Senator Creighton, and you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. The state of Texas regulates evictions and provides a clear, uniform process found in Chapter 24 of the Property Code and the 510 series of the Rules of Civil Procedure. Recently, some cities have adopted ordinances to extend or delay the eviction process. These local ordinances establish additional city-specific notices which may mandate landlords wait for up to 3 months after providing notice to file an eviction petition with a court of law in contradiction to state law. During this time and all the way through the judicial process, the tenant is not paying the landlord rent, but the property owners are still responsible for providing housing, paying the mortgage, property taxes, maintenance, and other operating expenses. Senate Bill 986 ensures the eviction process is consistent across the state by prohibiting a local government from adopting an ordinance that's already covered in Chapter 24 of the Texas Property Code. The bill follows an Attorney General opinion which affirmed the Texas legislature is the correct forum for considering changes to the eviction process. Senate Bill 986 does not affect federal housing programs. This bill is limited to the process set out by the legislature in Chapter 24 of the Property Code, nothing more. Evictions are a difficult situation. They usually mean, like most other civil cases, a substantial loss for all parties involved. It's a last resort for property owners, so many of them do whatever they can to keep good residents by working out payment plans or other arrangements. But unfortunately, sometimes evictions are necessary. You'll hear testimony today about the impact of the drawn-out eviction process in some Texas cities. And to ensure consistency and fairness for all parties across the state, the forum needs to be the Texas legislature, not individual city councils. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Members, questions of the author? Chair opens up public testimony on bill, calls Jessica Galashaw, Mark Melton, Dominic Robideau, and Ben Martin. Mr. Galashaw?
Mark Melton.
Mark, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, thanks for having me. My name is Mark Melton. I'm an attorney in Dallas, a partner at a large international law firm, and I'm actually a transactional tax lawyer. And so not traditionally into evictions, but when COVID began, by something of a fluke, through a pro bono project, I ended up doing quite a bit of eviction defense work. In the last 3 years, have formed a nonprofit called the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center. We currently employ 8 full-time lawyers. All we do is defend tenants in eviction cases in Dallas County. And since the pandemic began, we have helped over 12,000 families in Dallas County avoid eviction. So I have a front row seat to exactly what is actually happening in these eviction courts. There's some background here that I think is important for you all to know, which is our system's not working. So this is not a level playing field. Everything is broken. We have data that shows that for every 100 evictions granted, 85 of them, the tenant should have won. So we've got a huge problem. And all these ordinances do that the cities have passed, they're not making it unfair to the landlords. They're just making it slightly less unfair to the tenants. So we've got a very broken system. In the large cities, we have different problems than rural counties have. We've got huge homelessness, affordable housing issues, and we've got a broken legal system where we're violating the constitutional rights of our tenants every single day. And that should concern everyone, regardless of party, because the rule of law should matter, and the Constitution should matter, and due process is not a thing that happens in justice courts. We spend fewer than 4 minutes on average in an eviction case in Dallas County. That's about the time you gave me to talk today. How are you going to develop all the facts, review the documents, hear the defenses? In Houston, 2 weeks ago, one JP set 455 cases in one day and heard all of them. That's less than a minute per case. That's what happens in our justice courts. Our tenants are getting railroaded.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. Members, questions? Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Jessica Galshaw, and I'm the Director of the Office of Community Care for the City of Dallas. Today, I'm here on behalf of the City of Dallas to register opposition to Senate Bill 986. For several years, even predating the pandemic, Dallas has had among the highest numbers of evictions in the nation. In 2021, 78% of households in Dallas earning under $50,000 were considered housing cost burdened. For these households, a single unexpected cost can lead them to struggling to pay bills any given month and put them at risk at homelessness with little to no opportunity for recourse. The City of Dallas, in partnership with local nonprofits and the Dallas Housing Authority, administered in excess of $100 million in rental assistance since 2020. This is no easy feat, and it was accomplished through the dogged determination of all sectors, both private and public, coming together to try to ensure that Dallas did not experience a tsunami of evictions. These funds, coupled with locally responsive temporary ordinances to address evictions, have prevented many residents and families from losing their homes and facing homelessness. We are here because evictions are harmful for those involved. Residents who could find themselves homeless with an eviction on their record for years to come. Evictions are costly for landlords whose bottom lines are affected, and evictions disproportionately impact women and children and often are concentrated in communities and certain properties. The city adopted 2 different eviction ordinances, first in 2020 and the second in November 2022, to make specific changes to the original ordinance to address specific requests from the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas and the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center. Throughout the entire process, from the beginning through now and current discussions, the city has been intentional in being communicative and transparent with all partners involved, including the Apartment Association, Eviction Advocacy Center, Legal Aid Organization, tenants unions, and numerous others. The city has held meetings with each of these organizations specifically to get their feedback on any potential progress that would be made related to addressing the issue. And by preventing cities and municipalities from implementing locally responsive ordinances, we're unable to work alongside of our local stakeholders to develop local, reasonable, and responsive policies.
Thank you, Ms. Galshaw. Members, questions?
Super quick question, Mr. Melton, if I might.
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask you short answer questions in the interest of time, try to short answers. You in your professional life have represented landlords in transactions, have you not?
I have represented landlords. I do billions of dollars worth of multifamily transactions a year across the United States.
And so you can appreciate the concerns that Senator Creighton was articulating earlier about having to carry somebody when they're justly owed rent.
In 2008, I had 2 rent homes myself that I lost when my tenants essentially went bankrupt in that financial crisis.
So you're not unsympathetic to the perspective. Given that and given your experience, are there ways that this bill could be amended or fixed so that we can address some of the concerns of the landlord while preserving the power of cities to deal with local problems and local issues with probate courts? I'm sorry, not probate courts, with JP courts.
I think we can. And the current ordinances don't contradict the property code, right? They work alongside it. The property code provides that applicable laws can provide for additional notices in Section 2405E. All the City of Dallas did was create the applicable law that the legislature contemplated. And the Attorney General opinion that Senator Creighton referenced actually was just talking about whether an emergency order could override Chapter 24. It did not talk about these kinds of ordinances at all.
Well, given your expertise and perspective, I hope you maybe can work with me and Senator Creighton, and maybe we can come up with something that works for a broader.
I would appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Creighton.
I just wanted to mention, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Melton took the time to come by the office, worked with me and my staff. It was very helpful to sit and visit with him about expertise in the area. I mean, at the end of the day, the bill is just about consistency and fairness and making sure we enforce the property code on the books, that these issues are handled here in the legislature, not in individual city councils, but absolutely we'll continue to work with you and Senator Johnson, and thank you for the time you took to come visit with me at the office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Members, there are 8 more individuals which testify, but we have got to get to the floor. So with that, we're going to stand in recess, subject to call the chair, to 15 minutes after